Here we go.
Farm Companion.
It's catching on.
Farm Companion. It's catchy.
Hey, we've been, is this number 3?
I think so.
Yeah, number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency.
Farm Companion. Oh, yeah.
Farm Companion consistency.
All the way there. Number 3.
Yes, the shocker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So.
It is March 13th.
Yeah, buddy.
If you're listening to this.
Feels like freaking May, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been 70 degrees all week.
I know. It's beautiful.
It's going to go away a little bit next week, but.
Yeah. Well,
classic.
that's a pessimistic way to look at it.
Classic March weather. Well, I did notice, I don't know, it was one of my stealth cam pictures or something. My clover's starting to pop pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
In Ohio,
Should be.
at least.
Should be.
So, and I need to frost seed. Haven't done that yet either.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I know. March is slipping away from you. So I'm holding you to the fire on the Illinois thing.
I know, dude.
It's like it'll be freaking April before you know it.
It's the problem with putting the head down during the season is when it's not the season, the head has to come back up. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this, it's March 16th. March 16th. Halfway through.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hard to believe. I haven't found a shed yet this year, but I haven't really been out that much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I do enjoy it. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're a lot of fun to find, but it's a lot of work too.
Well,
it's a lot of walking.
Yeah, I mean, I had that conversation with somebody the other day because they were asking if I found any sheds, and it was like, well, if I get to the farm, like, I got to get shit done.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to just walk around for 8 hours, like, if I'm out there, like, that's my chance to, like, do work and get, you know, whether it's clearing trees off of trails or, you know, putting up a gate or getting ready to plant, like,
there's always work to be done. Yeah, no, that is the problem. You know, it's like, well, do I want to just keep looking, or do I, can I dig into some projects? And it's like, the projects always seem to take priority.
It's the downfall of not having it in your backyard where, like, it's been 70 degrees all week.
Yeah.
I could go and walk for 2 hours in an evening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just don't get there.
Yeah. And you really do more and more. I try to time it with or take advantage of those cloudy days. They're hard to find on sunny days, man. They just, that sun glare, and it's beautiful. It's a great day to be outside, but
yeah,
they're hard to find.
Yeah. Really tough. So
especially too, I mean, like where I'm at, there's a lot of ground to cover, which is like, you can look at it like a positive thing, but it's not like it's, I can say this because we've shed hunted in the Midwest. It's like there's dense cover, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's almost kind of like you can cover less ground and find more. It seems like it's just better habitat. And here it's like, you got to do a lot of walking, cover a lot of ridges to, to find any,
Yeah. I think that's been the hardest part is like, I think a couple days I've walked, 4, 5, 6 miles, and like, I'm just covering ground. Yeah. And it's also one person.
It gets old fast. It does. Yeah, I think my efforts have been concentrated on like, where I think they are, where I have recent history of, deer that I'm looking for, and I have the food sources, and like there's good odds that they'll be there.
Yep.
And I've done really well with that. That first day I went out, I found 10 or 12.
10 or 12.
Between Dad and I, And it was cloudy day. It was mid-February, whatever.
Most of those around food sources. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really walked the Kentucky farm that much. Like, I assume there's probably some in my bean fields just because they're holding pods, or some of them are holding pods. But I've also seen several handfuls of buck still holding right now.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen.
Mostly small ones, mostly 1-year-olds. I think maybe a couple 2-year-olds.
I think you got 5 or 10% left holding.
Yeah. From
the cameras that I've got between Ohio and Illinois.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen any in Illinois in a while, have we?
No, there was like a half rack spike on north yesterday. But
yeah. No, I have a couple half racks. I've got a few, 1-year-old basket racks that are still holding, that haven't kicked off.
Found that one on that PA listing the other day. That little
little 6-point,
little doinker, little city buck there.
Little hunting property. Perfect for you.
Yeah.
Anyone looking? Give us
a little 2-acre ridge here for you.
Yeah, I just gotta dodge the trash and the tires and stuff. Yeah, that'll happen in the city. But no, I mean, I would say that most of them are probably laid down, and hopefully we're gonna get a little bit of rain this weekend, warmer weather. Things are gonna start greening up before we know it.
Yeah. Well, I got started on, and maybe I talked about it I'm sure we've talked about, just switch in general, touching some of that up. But Sturgis sent us, our annual batch here, kind of like 5 acres worth of stuff here. And I had some leftover from last year. And I commented on the last one that Dad was kind of shutting down on the timber burn stuff. So I shifted, and I was like, man,
which is shut down for the year. No burn this year.
I don't know. It's early. It's early. There's always time.
Yeah.
But as of right now, yeah, it's taking the back seat to. I just shifted. There's another area that I was like, it's better than nothing. You know what I mean? It's like, and truthfully, I've not done a whole lot of switchgrass planting, period. I mean, last year was some of the first stuff that we did, and it was small, like real pockety, a couple different, long, dividing strips and stuff. And so far, so good on my end of it. I know you've had some, what's the word? Maybe not as much success or
for the switch,
whatever you would call it.
Yeah. No, none.
Yeah. So, but this is the first. It's bigger section. So it's not a contiguous field. It's it is, but it's broken up by draws and roads and a few other things. It's one that we burned last year. That honestly just, and this is where like a learning curve that I'm on right now is this. In maybe 2 years ago, we had if we look at them as rivaling conversations with, one was with Jeff Sturgis, who was advocating for switchgrass cover in that plantings, and Craig Harper, who's more fan of Let It Grow, and old field management type of stuff. And I think I'm at the point now, 2 to 3 years into having gone more of the Craig Harper method. And it's not to say that Craig is wrong at all, because there's probably parts of the country where that is going to...
I just don't think it's been enough time.
It's going to long-term yield, the better thing. Yeah, I think
it's a 7 to 10 year project.
I think in some years in some places it's 1 to 3, but it is for sure.
No way.
Yeah, no, for sure.
For what?
I mean, there are places in the country that in a matter of 1 to 3 years, an old farm field, ag field can turn into habitat, stuff that they'll bed in. Not where I'm at though. That's what I'm saying. I'm learning. I think it's like 15 to 20.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just depends. Like if you're talking like woody browse and structure, it's 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any place that's developing in 2 to 3 years.
I've seen it. Like where we hunted in Illinois. Where were we? It was near Shawnee. It was Southern Illinois. Yeah, it was 2020.
21.
Yeah, one of those fields. It was like one of the last places that I had stumbled into. It was that super overgrown field, and I was like, "This is it," And it had those trails mowed down through it and stuff. I talked to the neighbor, and he's like, "Yeah, they just stopped farming this like 2 years ago," and it was gnarly.
Interesting. But, yeah, I mean that might be.
But
soil
that's
quality.
Southern Illinois. It's absolutely soil quality.
I mean that would make me believe that switch is gonna not work though, because like you still need good soil quality to grow switch as well.
I don't know.
That's why I think it's so like. Most of the people, this isn't a bad recommendation, it's just most of the switch recommendations are coming out of Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Like
those northeastern states too. I don't know what the soil is like.
No, dude, nobody's using that stuff in the Northeast.
In Wisconsin?
That's not the Northeast, it's the Midwest.
Oh, well, what do you call them? Yeah, you're calling it like Maine and New Hampshire and stuff?
Yeah, like New York maybe, but there's better soils in some of those places too. But other than that, like...
My soil is pretty decent. I mean, it's not terrible.
Yeah, but then that goes against the old field management side. You see what I'm saying? Like, they're hand in hand. Basically, what I'm getting at is, like, we've had this discussion probably since we started the podcast of, like, switchgrass. Like, it seems to be... I just don't think it works in, like, the mid-Atlantic states. I don't think it works well in most of the southeastern states either. I think it's a Midwestern.
You're going to have to be more specific, though, because, like, there's definitely places in Pennsylvania that it will grow. There's definitely places in New York that it will grow.
In the best fertility-based soils.
Yeah. So what do you... Yeah.
But that's not like... Okay, so some places in western Ohio would work, where they've got great soil. Everything in southeastern Ohio and eastern Ohio and northeast Ohio, probably not as well. Most of Pennsylvania, except for, like, Lancaster County and where, like, the major farm region is, probably wouldn't work that well. Or at least it will take a lot of years to develop.
In Lancaster?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, that's where you're seeing $20,000 an acre ground. Because
you don't think it would grow that well?
No, I do think. That's the only place in Pennsylvania.
What about like just north of here? Like what about like Butler County?
I think that's the same soil you have.
I don't know. Yeah, our soil is not terrible. I mean, it's not.
You don't see anybody using it, and you don't see CRP programs.
Well, it's more of that though. I don't think that's because of the soil quality necessarily. I just think it's just not common practice, and it's not a native either. You know,
they are natives.
Not to Eastern Ohio.
I mean, I
don't think so. No,
I think the warm season grass. I mean, I have
not the blends that we're planting though.
Well, I mean, the varieties are different, but like switchgrass is. Same with like big blue stem. Like I've got big blue stem and stuff in my fields in Kentucky. Nobody ever planted it there. It's just it's a native warm season grass.
I don't think we do where I'm at.
I just don't think it exists as much anymore because it's all been turned to ag or pasture. It's there. I bet if you let those pastures grow up, you would have warm season grasses.
It's all fescue. They have been growing up. That's what it was for 10 years.
What, warm season grasses?
Pasture. It all just turns to fescue eventually. Like, and maybe
that's because they probably
cool season
they
suppresses
established. It. Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, that's the number one killer of those fields.
Well, what I'm saying is so far so good on the stuff that I've planted. I mean, it's on pace with what I would expect or would hope to see.
Yeah,
the stuff that I planted last year, like right now today in March is
like 3 foot tall.
Most of it's like 2.5 to 3 foot tall. So that's after the winter. That's you know, and there's some stuff in there. There's the one that looks like switch a lot is orchard grass.
Yeah, orchard grass,
thicker stem and stuff. There's some of that in there, but pretty good on the foxtail, pretty good on everything else. So this year will be
should be substantial
further down the road of like success or not with those plantings. And in the meantime, here I'm planting this bigger. In total, it's going to be in about 7 acres, and it's in 1, 2.
And it's all cool
4,
season grasses
3, 4,
now.
5 different chunks. So what we did was this was one of the fields that I sprayed 2 years ago in the fall
to kill the cool season.
Yep. And so I started down the road of like old field management. I was like, hey, we're going to sprayed all that fescue, killed it pretty good, burned it. I don't think maybe it was as early as last year. Maybe it was last year.
Yep.
You know, so we would have sprayed it in the fall of 23. Yep, burned it in the
spring of 24
last year. And then this past year, it kind of like, it just didn't meet my expectation for even the first year of that. It just was like, had a bunch of, you know, had like a contiguous looking broad. I don't think it was ragweed, but it was something.
Probably a ragweed or a goldenrod,
something like that. It was just like stemmy, and it, you know, at the tallest it maybe got to 2.5, 3 feet, and then it just kind of died. And so I don't know. I was like, I'm just not patient enough, but basically, so rather than giving that 8 or 10 more years, and I don't know if this is absolutely necessary or not, but where I started down the road here of going to plant this in switchgrass was I went and sprayed simazine on this.
Yep, a couple weeks ago.
Before green up. So, no, just this past Sunday.
Oh, this past Sunday.
You know, so early to mid-March is the general.
Which is the right time
frame to shoot for that. And so I'm going off of just, you know, videos, mainly, you know, Sturgis's videos. Hey, simazine is the first move. Scalma told us after that, he's like, I don't know if that's necessary if you're going to drill like in May, which is what I'm going to end up doing versus frost seeding. So, but anyways, it's not going to hurt. So I sprayed 2 quarts the acre of simazine on all of that. And then in about a month, I'm going to go and hit it with Gly and 2,4-D. So 2 to 3 quarts Gly, I think 1 quart 2,4-D is what it is, or 2 pints or something like that. For the first like hard kill.
Yep.
And then I'll do it one more time in early to mid-May. And then I'll drill at or just after that second spraying.
And we talked about your drilling light.
Yeah, so because most of it I want to be either bedding and or like transitional cover. as opposed to like a hard wall. It's not like a line of access or a visual barrier from the road.
It's on the screen.
Yep. So rather than the 8 to 10 acres that, it actually does say on the bag,
8 to 10 pounds.
I'm planting it. I'm planting it about a half rate. So about 4 pounds to the acre.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about this morning is like, I just think that deer in our habitat are genetically wired to utilize woodlots for bedding versus deer in Iowa and Illinois and Kansas and Nebraska where, they're going to utilize them if they can, but they also have just giant fields that they're utilizing just as frequently, if not more. And I think that it kind of goes back to the like, well, if I create these bedding areas where they've never been, like, can I get these bucks to use them? In some cases, but I still think that most of those mature deer are just like, they know where they're going. They're not going to change it because they've survived so far. Whereas like your younger bucks will start to be educated and basically trained to use those.
Yeah. And I don't know that I don't think I can dial it in to that level. Like maybe, it's more, we've been hunting that farm for 7-8 years now. And I've observed where does generally will tend to be bedding and moving and stuff in relation versus, some of the bucks. And so I would agree with what you're saying. So, but by putting this in here, I think it's going to, what's the word? It's going to reinforce that. If anything, it's going to only
give them that insulation and that buffer,
make that better. Yeah. So like in the areas that I'm thinking of here, like it's number one, it's going to give me some better cover for getting in and for getting it. It's a visual barrier between me and some bigger woodlots. That's what you got to realize. Like where I'm at, it's like, dude, you can see so far, and just even the smallest visual barrier, something you can put up it like in a pocketed sense is it can only help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and 7 acres of switch is not a little bit of switch. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's not cheap either.
Yeah. Well, that's where Sturgis is helping us out with some of that, and also it connects those things. So right now I've got a 60-acre block of timber in which I've done some clear cutting on the knobs and stuff. That's where those bucks are bedding, have been. And it's disconnected from, it's basically, there's this kind of big open, it's a hilly rolling field. It's one that they will walk across, but, last light type of a thing.
Because they're vulnerable. They're open.
They're going to expose themselves there. I mean, it's a remote field, but it's still open. And then that leads down into a ditch. And then back up on the other side is a destination grain field, 8 or 10 acre bean field and some brassica plots surrounding it. So that's where I've got this secular.
They're all kind of
around that. So what I've done now is I've connected the two. I think they'll be way more inclined now to start trotting down across that switchgrass field earlier and get into the ditch. Doesn't mean I'm going to hunt them there, but if I'm between the bedroom and the switch now, the likelihood of them approaching that beforehand, I think, is better, and my access to get there is better.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And I left strategic openings there. I'm assuming it's like just like you would on an ag field. I left like the waterways open. Like there's some very clear paths. And I'm sure they'll still go down through the switch in certain pockets. And I'm sure those does and stuff will bed in and around it, like in the ditch. So now, over a couple of years, because I planted one big strip of switch on the one side of the ditch, I've done 2 pockets of pine tree plantings, like on knobs up against that ditch. And now this big side of it is going to all be. So now this whole ditch, I've got like a 15 acre area that was once just a giant open pasture with a little creek ditch running through it is now looking like habitat and connects, is better connected too.
Yeah. I mean, well, and I think that goes back, like what it was, it couldn't get any worse. It was just fescue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the realization is like, it's easy to like, it just the reality, like over the years here, it's like, and maybe that's just is the case here that anybody's going to realize is like, man, the farm is just, the more you know, the more your farm seems to suck because you're like, well,
Yeah, especially when you're actively trying to do things every year and like you're not seeing monumental improvements over it.
Well, even if you are, it's easy to, somebody like us, we're constantly setting new goals, and it's hard to like, the reality is there were years 6-7 years ago where I, talked about shed hunting. I walked the entire farm way more thoroughly than I walked, and I found one 3.5-year-old side shed off of like Tallboy. The farm is monumentally better now because of food and timber work that we've done and stuff. But as you progress and you learn more, you're like, oh, all these things still suck. I need to make these all better. It really is like,
and it is a time thing, unfortunately.
It can take a lifetime to turn a farm into what you want. I
mean, it's the one, and I mean, Illinois, we have it a little bit, but like, it's just our farms are just so different. Like I have cover everywhere. Now it still sucks and like I still need to improve it, but it's there. I don't have food. Yeah. Like I don't have enough open areas to keep food. They eat me out of house and home every year, which is why, even if we walk, like I don't find any or hardly any sheds because they're not there when the food gets tight. Yeah. But if I look at early in the season when there's browse and forbs and low pressure and my food plots look good, I mean, I couldn't pack more bucks in a specific area.
Yeah,
it always begs the question. And I mean, depending on which bucket you're in, whether you're in the open ground, I need to create cover, or you're in the I have cover, I need to improve it, but I need to add food. Like the question is always which one's harder. Because it's like they're two very different strategies that have to take place. And frankly, the more that we talk, the more that I'm like, I think the guys who have to create cover are the ones who are in deep shit. Like if you have cover and you just need to improve it, like do a timber cut or select clear cuts or whatever, and then add some food. Sure, it's not easy. And a lot of times, like to create an acre or two food plot is costly. I mean, it costs you $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, but like you can do it. Like I could call somebody right now to go put a 2-acre food plot in Ohio. And by next week, there it is. It's there. If I say, Jared, go create 2 acres of cover on your fescue, you're not doing that in a week.
Yeah. Well, I personally have not overcome that. You know what I mean? As of today, it's like or in the past, I would have agreed with you. And maybe there's a difference in like a regionality here, but like we've talked to enough people now who have been really successful setting up farms and, talk about their ideal thing here. And like 9 out of 10 of them seem like they would prefer like a 60-40, 70-30 open ground to timber.
Yep. But look where they're at.
Well,
they're not where we're at.
Well, here's the other thing too, is because, we talk about Ohio a lot. I mean, that's kind of like the destination. And it's like, there aren't many of those guys that come out and, where this conversation is going. Basically, it's like, yeah, you don't have many consultants or land management guys coming out of Ohio because of the bait thing. Like that's what it is.
And it is a diverse state. I mean, if you go to Western Ohio, it looks completely different than where you are at or where I'm at.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. But you don't, and you also, it's not that I don't think people are managing in Ohio, because I do think that they are, but like the 70-30 or 60-40 strategy, because of probably the bait thing, I won't say it's irrelevant, but it's
well, the bait or the dirt thing.
It's less relevant.
Part of it too.
Because I don't know. I could go to my Ohio farm if I wanted to. If it was in my backyard, I could have 4 1-ton corn stations running from September 1st to January 31st.
Yep.
And just maintain them.
Yep.
I don't need food plots.
Right. Yeah.
That's the reality, is like I don't need them.
Sure.
If I create better cover with my timber that I have, and I have those bait stations out, I don't need food plots. I don't need ag. I don't need a destination source.
Yeah. But that's true regardless of a timber property versus an open property.
Which is why I'm saying it doesn't matter in Ohio as much.
What doesn't
Because
matter?
the composition of the land, because of a bait. Same with Kentucky. It's the same way. Like it's nice that I have more open ground, but if I manage feeders on my mountain property versus my soybean standing and my brassica and clover fields on my open property.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
It's the same amount of deer.
So if I say it a different way, like the acreage requirement for food primarily, based on the the feeding argument, is less necessary. You know what I mean? You don't need as much acreage, to plant.
You would want more cover.
You could argue that I'm, wasting a 10-acre field by planting it to soybeans when I should just be filling a giant protein feeder, or could be potentially making better use of the acreage. Yeah. And you're right. You're right.
I mean, we're thinking long term.
That's a choice,
right? It is. Yeah. And we're also trying to think where this thing's going. But I say that because if you let's say you buy an 80% open property in Ohio with 20% cover, I think you would be better to have 80% cover and 20% open because of it being a bait state. Knowing like what you can do with that 80% woods to just make it thick, gnarly bedding.
Yeah, I mean,
in fast time.
Yeah, but I mean, you can break it down more specifically. Like timber isn't necessarily cover.
No,
timber is timber.
It's better than a fescue field.
It is. Well, in some cases, yeah. I mean, it could be equal in some cases, honestly.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I mean, timber. I don't know, man. You can take a chainsaw and cut trees down,
but sometimes you don't even have to. Like like I was talking with Madison the other day. He was flying his thermal drone, like looking at some properties, and like there's a wide ass open timber property that if you looked at it, you're like, this place has no cover. Mm-hmm. And he said there are just bucks like bedded all over the ridge, just in the wide open, and they're just. That's cover for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't see that in an open fescue field right now.
No, but I would argue that if you could plant cover in an opening, I don't know. I don't know if I would argue, but it'd be an interesting, that's kind of what I'm getting into here. It's like, so hopefully 2 years from now, I've got a better foundation for this conversation.
Yeah.
Going from not a lot of cover that's been planted or, converted from open field to hopefully we'll have some, at some point here.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. And again, it's like for the longest time, I looked at all of my timber, properties as like a big disadvantage to not having places to make food. And it still is. Like it's for sure a crippling thing. And that's because I'm not going to go out there and put 4 tons of corn out every week. That's not my style.
I think in your situation, you need to either make them bigger, have more food, or fence them off. Keep them out of it until you have enough to get through.
Yeah.
Because the positive about the timber stuff is like it's really easy to create woody browse.
Yeah, I have a lot of woody. Like I'll have a pile of deer in there from probably in the next 2 months through first part of October, and then they start to slowly fade out from there.
That is interesting. Why do you think they leave?
I think one is I'm just packing a lot of them all into one small area. I mean, it's 230 acres if we're talking about Ohio.
You think they're packing in there because of your food plots that you're planting?
No, I think they're packing in there because of the forbs and the new browse that's created after that cut.
Okay. Because
I had bucks, but I never had that many bucks in there during the summertime. I do think though that we talk about like the farm DNA. That farm DNA is holding them in the summer and the early part of the season. Like even since I started, I've always had mature bucks on that farm in velvet into the early season.
Which honestly is interesting. It's kind of not what I would expect.
And I don't know why.
Do you know what I mean? Because like generally what I see is they stay away from that super thick, super high stem count stuff in the summer. That's why they're on me in the summer.
And then they
literally, and I can see it on a on a big scale. You know what I mean? I'm looking at 5-10 square miles type of thing. I'll see these bucks in the summer in what you would call, lacking habitat. It's ag fields and ditches and stuff. And then they leave, and they can only be going, I think, to bigger timber. That's more like what you're talking about. Some clear cut, wooded lots and stuff.
Mine is like lots of good forbs and early browse in the late summertime. And, plus I have food plots there. I've got clover plots and stuff, but just focus on the natural habitat and cover. It's got good cover. As we get into October and the mast starts to fall,
that'll disperse them.
That's when they disperse.
There you go.
because it is all big timber
I'm
around
seeing some
me.
of that too, for sure.
Yep. What is surprising, and maybe
freaking acorns, man.
I know what's surprising, and maybe it improves over the next 2 to 3 years as more woody browse is produced, is that they don't come back when that mass dries up, towards December, January, February. Like they stay gone. At least this year they did.
Interesting.
So maybe next year, as the amount of browse increases, that we see them come back. Or maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was a strong red oak year last year.
It was. We know it was.
And they stayed out and they didn't need to come back.
Could be.
So those are the things, per your point, like you need several years to understand your farm. Like these are the things that just keep changing that you're like, I don't know. And then next year could be completely different. And you're like, that's crazy.
The biggest question I have right now as I'm getting into this project is, will they bed in the switch? I don't
have that answer.
Maybe not even in, but around. You know what I mean? It's like regardless of timber or in and around. Regardless of timber or open ground, like whitetails everywhere are creatures of edge, and so I'm not expecting them to like bed down smack dab in the middle of these fields here.
I do like your drainage in between the switch. Like that's an opening. That's a defined edge.
And there's I've got a couple big pockets of there's some areas of autumn olive. Like not a lot of it, and we've never had an invasive problem with it, but it's just bush here, bush there. And I'm intentionally leaving those, and I'll plant the switch around them, or even little openings around. Most of our fields there'd be like a lone oak tree in it type of a thing. And
it's just a structure piece.
And they'll bed there, so there's other fields I could have chosen that are like 10 or 15 acre contiguous squares. And I'm like, I don't think that's the way to do that. What I chose was it'll be like an acre. It'll be like an acre and a half. It'll be like a quarter of an acre. And so my total edge count, like perimeter, is way greater than it would be if I did a big contiguous piece here. So
I think that's the way to do it. I mean, obviously I've kind of been in like pond mode here as I'm getting this pond ready at my house. And so I kind of visualize it the same way, is like if I just fill the pond up with water and I put fish in it, there's no structure, right? The fish don't marry themselves to any structure.
That's right.
If you think of the switchgrass as like a weed bed or something. Well, the reason like a big fish stays in that weed bed is because the small fish are in there, right? Like that's their security. But ultimately, a big bass or a walleye, they want to be next to like big structure, so whether that's a tree or a big rock mound or, a bush that you put in or tree, those pieces, and you don't have a monoculture of it, right? They're just strategically placed, and then that's where they gather. I think it's the same way with a big buck.
No doubt.
Is he's just looking for security cover around. I think we've already mentioned, we know they use their nose like crazy, but I think they use their eyes very, very a lot in these situations. And so I think as you kind of put that around, if you've got a lone autumn olive that's surrounded by switch and it creates this just little edge pocket there, number one, I think that's a great rut spot that he pushes a doe up to. We saw that in Illinois. But I think just from a bedding standpoint, like that's what he's looking for. That is enough back security cover with a security cover around him that he feels fine, that he can stand up, hit that drainage ditch, and go up to that bean field.
Yeah. There's a lot to be done with edge feathering too. That used to be like a popular term, but truthfully, I don't know how it's successfully integrated with a burn program on switch. The good news is I don't think you have to burn switch as often as I initially would have guessed. I think
in the Midwest, per what we were talking about, the soils and stuff, you probably do. I think just the rapid amount of growth and organic matter hitting the ground year after year, I just don't think we see that in our soils. So like when that switch grows, like from last year, it essentially is dead, right? And then the new switch grows beyond that, and the old switch goes to the ground. Well, you do that for 4 or 5 years.
Is that the case? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a large organic matter piece on the ground, essentially.
Okay.
And so that's where these burns start to come into play and stuff. So I think ultimately that along with just everything else that's kind of accumulated on the ground is why you need a burn, right? To come through and kind of back everything off, regenerate that native warm season grass. I just don't know if we see as much biomass, is the best way to look at it, growing annually out of our soils.
I'm not sure if I'm quite following the reason for it.
Well, so think about a burn. If you burn and set that thing back, right? That next year, after a burn, that thing's going to grow 7 to 8 foot tall, right?
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the burn. Burn it off, warm season grass, switch, whatever, grows 7 to 8 foot tall.
I don't know, truthfully. I mean, what is the purpose of the burn?
It's to burn
if you're
off
going to burn switchgrass.
All of that
the
biomass
thatch, essentially?
and thatch that is suppressing the new warm season grasses from coming up.
Okay.
You understand that they reset every year.
Yeah.
So like what
I'm
we're
with you.
seeing
I'm with you.
is dead.
All right.
And so what's new isn't even coming out of the ground yet.
Okay.
So if
I'm being honest, I don't know if I knew that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff that we're looking at
Completely
6 foot
dead.
tall, completely dead.
Okay.
It will start to lay over as new stuff starts to shoot up out of the same root system.
Okay.
Right? The same mass. 5 years of that happening is a big thatch layer of just trash.
Yep.
And so that starts to basically suffocate and block out sun and everything like that. So when you burn that off, it becomes fresh for that root system to put new shoots up that are imposed, basically.
Okay.
Or impeded,
All
I
right.
guess would be the best way. So that what I'm saying is we see that in Illinois. Like think about they mowed it, cut that dead stuff off. The next year it was like whatever, 6 feet tall.
Yeah, but that can't do any. Mowing is not going to do anything for thatch.
No. But what I'm saying is like it grows that fast in a year. I just don't think that we see that in our soils happening.
Okay.
So to your point of I don't think we need to burn as much where we're at, I would agree with that. Because
Okay.
I don't think there's as much biomass laying down every year. In Iowa and Illinois and those high productive soils, you do.
Interesting. I don't know enough to say what's right or wrong. I'm going off just because I've been watching as I'm planting.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And frankly, it's mainly Sturgis videos that I'm watching. You know, and he's basically saying it's like 8 or 10 years
For a burn rotation?
on a burn rotation.
Yeah, that would sound right.
You know, where I would have guessed.
I mean, I've
or
always
said,
heard 5.
Yeah, right. I would have said less.
Yeah.
So
Again, I can't even get the shit to grow, so it doesn't matter. But yes.
I think you will. I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
Tying that back into the edge feathering conversation, though, that's where I'm like,
Because you're worried about the extra fuel being down?
yeah, basically. Well, it's like you can if you establish the field and say, all right, it's gonna positively help it. It's gonna help it if I can edge feather, if I can go around the edge and cut trees that fall out into or around the edge of the switch. It's gonna create more structure around the edge. It's perfect. The question becomes 5, 8, 10 years
How do you
down
burn
the
it?
road when you're getting ready to have to set that back, whether it's with burning or chemical or anything, mowing. Yeah, how do you do that now with the structure laying in and around?
I mean, most of them I've seen have mechanically removed them with chainsaws and trees or and tractors.
Yeah.
And just kind of gone through the edge, and then they create their buffer there and burn into it. And it becomes extra fuel on the ground, but as long as you're burning into it, it's not a big deal.
So, and maybe as 8, 10 years passes, it's not that
Yeah, who knows?
as big of a deal, I guess. So, but there's something to remember. It's like you don't want to fall every single tree on
Well, and here's the other
on the sides,
thing.
though.
And again, we're fairly inexperienced at this, right? So it's just discussion is like, I would assume that most of those people doing those burn rotations on a 3, 5, whatever year, it's because the CRP contract is requiring them to. If you're not in a CRP contract, like maybe there's no need to burn.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they mowed that CRP in Illinois because it said they had to. I assume most of these guys, whether it's 3 or 5 years, have that in the contract. And it's because it benefits pollinators, small mammals, all these other things that CRP is put in place for. Frankly, we don't give a shit. We're just doing it for deer and for deer cover. So if you never have to really burn it, besides if at some point you worry that it becomes a fire hazard, just like you would if there was a pile of trees in the woods that eventually became dried out and in a heavy fuel load.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason you're going to want to burn it is if it's lacking in cover. If for some reason it becomes weedy or whatever.
And I mean, to our discussion a couple of weeks ago, I would want my switch and CRP or whatever these warm season grasses are, to have briars and all this other stuff just continuing to grow up and be nasty.
Well, and honestly, that's part of the half
dose.
Dose. You know, is I don't want a contiguous, like, dense stand of switchgrass, because I just don't think they'll use it the way that I want to.
I would agree.
That I want them to, you know.
Yep.
So, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm anxious to see.
We shall see.
2 years from now, you know.
Hang with us for the next 2 years.
It's not going to be hard to tell, right? If you could go in there and find the beds, it's like, hey, there they are, or there they aren't, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect, man. Well, I mean, this is what this Farm Companion is about, right? It's just having these discussions of like, hey, this is what's going on in our brains. This is what's happening. Like, my hope is that people are listening to this and are like, I've been trying to figure out the same thing.
It's funny, dude. The property management and manipulation piece of hunting is like, it'll keep you up at night. I was up till 12:30 last night, just mind reeling about. You just jump from different spots, and like you can, but you almost can't overthink. Like I said, we're 8 years into this farm or whatever, and it's like I'm still like, you know, I could change it completely. You know what I mean? As it evolves and stuff, and there's new, you know, you learn new things, there's new strategy. You're like, I need to go back and do this whole thing over again. And
it's hard when you don't have
it's endless toil.
Yeah, like proof points. Like if let's say you established a bunch of CRP, and right now it's 7 foot tall and the deer are using it. It's like, there it is. They did it. I can replicate this.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that we're talking.
We've done that with most of the timber stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
that it works.
At least cutting. There's things I know that works. With the food stuff, I'm like, I know it works. I know this with water holes. I know this works. And so you keep adding tools to the toolbox, you know, and one thing that we just never really have done a whole lot of is the switchgrass.
Yeah.
And in my case, you know, I'm like, man, there's so much opportunity for if that works. That could be one of the biggest tools in my belt there.
Yeah, especially with converting all those fescue fields and potentially a new farm bill at some point to turn ag into CRP.
Yeah, well, having that knowledge going into a farm contract at some point will be critical. You know.
Cool. Well, that's all we got, right? We appreciate everyone listening to Farm Companion for this week, and hopefully took a little bit of what we're talking about and can relate it to your own
switchgrass frustrations.
Yeah. I mean, it all kind of still can tie back into the first one we did, which is basically our deer cover sucks. And like, it's just a constant struggle of figuring out what can we do to make it better.
We're talking on the way here. I'm like, dude, I mean, it's obviously a very general statement, but I think the deer cover in Ohio sucks. Like just the statewide, at least the eastern part of it, you know, and the southern part of it too. And there are some big deer there still, you know. So it's like,
well, I think they're in where there's clear cuts. I think where they've done a lot of oil and gas work and they've wiped areas out. Those now 10 years later are gnarly.
Yeah, just disturbance and improvement, and like that's where they are. They're in pocketed areas. So if you can have a farm full of that, I think you'd be all right.
Yeah, I mean, come back to me 5 or 6 years from now, and the 300 acres that they chipped down to bare dirt around me will be an absolute. It'll be the best stuff around.
Yeah,
it'll be a jungle. Yeah. So I mean, that's just, it takes time, you know, and unfortunately we're impatient on some things. But if we can prove the model, we can replicate it with confidence. And right now, and it's no offense to those guys, it's hard to take anything that's happening in Iowa and Western Illinois and Missouri and say, cool, let's do it here, because it just won't work.
Got to see it for ourselves.
Yeah. So anyways, we appreciate you listening to Farm Companion, and we'll catch y'all next Sunday.
Farm Companion.
Take me